Alright, well, we're starting a new little project today. We're still working on updating the shop, so I can't get too involved in any of my bigger projects right now, but I feel we'll need to be doing a little bit of something, so we're going to do a little pattern making here. Since the weather's been cold and we've had kind of a winter here, been cold in the shop and everything, I spent quite a bit of time developing patterns and doing some 3D printed patterns for different foundry projects and things like that. So one of the things, as soon as I get the shop hopefully pretty well reorganized, is we're going to start working pretty heavily in our foundry and getting that situated to where I finally want it to be. Hopefully upgrade some equipment and things like that. I've got a McElvey furnace that we need to go through and do a little bit of refurb to, and it's one I bought here 2 or 3 years ago, something like that, and I never got it up and running. I kind of wanted to put it back to original condition with all the safety shutoffs and all that on it, and I just haven't had the time or the energy to get that done. So that's going to be one of the projects coming up for our aluminum casting. Anyway, what we're working on today is a small Atlas project, and I guess it's not too small a project, but it's a little Atlas project. We're going to work on a set of developing the patterns for a set of index centers for on the milling machine. And I bought this headstock end of a set off of eBay, there again, several years ago, and this is pretty much the condition I bought it in. It's got a few more of the attachments, but it was in pretty rough shape, and it was only the headstock. There's what I actually purchased in its entirety. And so the first thing we're going to do is develop a tailstock pattern for this. I'll just kind of give you a little bit of my thought process in how we build these and what we're doing here. Had quite a few pictures, or I've collected quite a few pictures of the tailstock end, of which here's one of them. And it's pretty much a mirror image of this with a shorter base. We've changed our supports just a little bit, and the tailstock tube assembly is a little bit different, but there's a lot of similarities to them since they were machined as a pair. Now, one of the things that comes up quite a bit, and I've had guys say, no, every Atlas machine is its own individual entity and everything, and I've kind of covered this before, but in my experience, what Atlas has done is like any other smart manufacturing entity, is they've used as many common products or adapted as many common products throughout their entire line, so they don't have to produce as many different, we call them SKUs now, but we don't have to carry, or they didn't have to carry quite the product inventory. So my contention, and I've already verified it to be pretty well true through a lot of the machines, is even though they may have a slightly different number or an entirely different number, a lot of those parts were interchanged between the lathe, the shaper, and the mill, and some of the accessories, as we're going to find out here. So, and one of the examples that I've kind of had discussions over in the past is the bearings in the milling machine, and there's a lot of similarities or a lot of interchangeability between some of the other machines, not just, you know, the ones they put in the headstock of the mill are the same bearings they're using in the 6-inch lathe and things like that. So there's a lot of similarities here in the same way across. So what I've done, and I've kind of tried to investigate what I needed to know to do these, and a lot of the parts that are here in the headstock and the tailstock are interchangeable with the 6-inch lathe, or they may not be interchangeable, although quite a few of them are, but a lot of them are, we'll say, derivatives of what was in the 6-inch lathe. So when I got this, what I got was this ragged spindle that's in it, but when you look at the drawings from some of the Atlas 6-inch stuff, of course we have the same 1 in 10 threads on the spindle nose. We have a number 2 Morris taper, which is common to the 6-inch lathe, and we've got the same shoulder. These dimensions up here appear to be the same. Now where you run into differences is where we've threaded at the back for a locking collar to set our end play. It accepts a gear here, so you can put your different gears on to interchange what the number of teeth you're going to cut or whatever you're indexing, and of course it indexes up just like it would on all of the Atlas machines. It sets on there, got a keyway, held it in place, and then it's got a locking collar on the back end to hold things in position. So anyway, when you compare the dimensions, these here at the back are different, and it's shorter than the 6-inch Atlas lathe from what I've seen from the drawings. But when you look at from here on forward in the internal dimensions, they're exactly the same as the 6-inch. So I'm surmising what Atlas did is they developed a 6-inch lathe, and I would suspect it was developed before this set of index centers for the mill was developed. But all they did was they took that spindle out of the 6-inch, they shortened it up to whatever length it was here, and turned and threaded it to adapt to the headstock. But the rest of it, its origins would have been in the spindle, in the 6-inch lathe spindle. So that's the way that is. Now it's got, the things I got that were important to me was I got the main casting, I got the dog here, and then I got the adjustments, which sits here on the end to adapt to whatever gear you're putting on, so you can index into those gears like that. So those were the things that were important to me. The split collars that went in there, I think I got, well, I know I got those, but they were all eroded and destroyed. So we'll just rebuild those. That's not an issue at all. Same way with the knobs here. These knobs are all eroded away and everything. So we'll be making some drawings off of these and producing some parts that I don't have before. And the way I'm probably going to cast this is I'm going to cast it, and this will be the tailstock end, although if we do patterns for the headstock too, I'll do them the same way. They'll be cast in this position, and we'll probably core these. We'll probably put a core in these, so we'll have to build a core box for them and that type of thing. We'll leave them oversized, but it's relatively straightforward and basically a mirrored dimension on the other side. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cast these with aluminum shrinkage in mind, although I plan on casting these ultimately in cast iron. We're going to do a 3/16 shrink on them, or allow for a 3/16 shrinkage, which is what you would allow for aluminum. Casting in cast iron, you'll normally allow 1/8 of an inch, and I've got shrink rules for both of those. This happens to be a 3/16 shrink rule. So when we build our patterns, we build it off of this ruler, and then it's got the shrinkage allowance already built into it. What I will probably do, well, I know what I'm going to do. We're going to leave extra material down here. When we machine these, we'll index it to this point and deck off the height so we can get our smooth flat surface there, and of course we'll have to orient it in the mill when we do this. I'm sure how we'll do it, or I'm assuming how we'll do it is in the milling machine, and we'll cut our keyways and all that, and those will be our master point. Then I will probably, to machine our bore, we'll probably set it on an angle plate in the mill, is what I'm assuming. I may change my mind and do some other process there, but that's kind of how I'm planning on machining them. So anyway, that's the thought behind it. Then it was probably set up, and we can use our bottom deck and probably a front edge, I'm guessing, front or rear edge, it doesn't really matter as long as we're consistent with both of them. And those will be our index points to machine all the rest of our components off of, whether we've got it in this orientation or whether we've got it in this orientation to bore this and to drill our holes into the rest of it. So anyway, pretty straightforward from a pattern making standpoint or from a casting standpoint. And standard machining, there's a million different ways you can do it. That just happens to be the way I'm going to do it. Now, when we come to the tailstock, we've got a 3-inch center height on this because we've got 6-inch maximum capacity, and we've got 9 inches between centers, what they call for on the table of the mill. So I've already kind of figured that, and just from looking at the drawings, a lot of these dimensions are in the wind. The only thing we're really interested in is alignment through our bore, flatness to the table, and parallelism with that. So a lot of this other stuff, as long as we've got those dimensions, they're kind of in the wind, we can do whatever we want. I'm going to try and stay as true as I can to what Atlas intended, but since I don't have a tailstock to match it off of, just pictures and some other dimensions off of other pieces of equipment, why, I can get a pretty good idea of what that was. Now, from looking at pictures, it looks like the tailstock was slightly shorter and basically square. So when I look at the finished dimensions on this one, and these are going to vary depending on when they were produced and what foundry they came out of, if they had more than one set of patterns. So there's going to be variations you see within the Atlas themselves. I have seen tailstock castings that have got only one hole here for a hold down, but then I've also seen like this, like the headstock has, which has 2 holes in it. So there again, why there was a second set of holes or why there was only one set of, I don't know, but it's stuff that really is irrelevant. But the tailstock casting, the base, looks to be pretty much square. So we've got 3 1/4 inches basically is what I've got front to back. So I'm assuming that's about what we've got here for our tailstock casting base. So it's 3 1/4 as opposed to 4 1/4 or 4 3/8 on the headstock. Now for the tailstock spindle itself, and people may disagree with me, but it's basically a modified 6-inch lathe tailstock. That's what it is. Some of the parts are interchangeable, And there may be a few dimensional changes in them, and I'll go over what I think I know so far. Now, of course, height is different because it had a 6-inch and had a riser and all that stuff. And it's quite a bit different shaped here. Our lock is on the front for our split cotters. And when we look at the rest of it, and I've got the ram for this someplace. It's in one of my Atlas parts boxes. I didn't bother to dig it out because at this point in time it's not necessary. The only differences that I see, the bore is the same. They're both a number 1 Morris taper, and there's a lot of similarities and a lot of differences. But when we come to this assembly, it's basically going to be the same. The tailstock cap that goes back here, the part numbers are exactly the same. It uses the same part on the tailstock. The thrust bearings and all of those things, the part numbers are basically the same. Now on the ram itself, I know there's 1 and possibly 2 differences, and there again, one of them is on the index centers. It doesn't have the number markings and the hash marks for how far your centers or your ram is extended. So they didn't put that on the index centers while it was on the Atlas lathe. The only other difference that I find is the shaft itself, and this one came off of this tailstock. This shaft has a different number than what is on the index centers, and I surmise the reason for that is they may have shortened up this screw and not given it as much travel, and I could be wrong, but that's the only thing that really explains to me why there would be a different number there. And if that's the case, then they probably shortened up the tailstock ram too. But otherwise, that's pretty much the differences between them. So that's what I've got going on here in the shop today. I'm just going to putter with this. I probably will not put any of the pattern making in this particular video. I'll probably do that in the next video on this series. Like I say, we're just kind of puttering and getting projects going again. Hopefully I can make some progress on this. One of the other projects I will probably have coming up this year is I have another Atlas mill that we're going to be assembling. I've got almost all the major components, and it's going to be a MFBH. Is that the production? MHB would be this model right here, which is a production machine. Got a different bed on it, has production levers rather than hand wheels, both for cross slide and for height, I believe. Yes, our height for our knee is there, and our cross slide is there. I have most of the parts to assemble one of these machines, or most of the major castings. So this will be an ongoing process as I gather up parts. I found it interesting, and of course I'm like everybody else. I search parts. I search eBay for parts, and I've been perusing there, and it's interesting what you find. And the only reason I point this out is just be aware what you're looking for parts. There's several things that stand out to me when I look on eBay and read description for parts. One of the things that stands out to me is when I see seller refurbished or remanufactured. I normally kind of run from those things because I'd rather see a machine in the condition it's in, and then I know what I have to do to it. Seller refurbished usually means it was maybe sandblasted off and then repainted. So are we hiding some flaws in there? Or the thing you want to bear in mind is I don't care what anyone describes the condition of the machine as being. It's a worn machine. You know, these machines are old enough now. If you're into these small machines like this from Atlas, they've all been well worn. I don't care if they say they're in excellent condition or, you know, they've been well used and abused. So just keep that in mind when you buy these parts. Just because someone tells you it's rare doesn't necessarily mean it's so. A perfect example of that will be this little block-off plate for on the shaper. And this one was described as seller refurbished, which means it was sandblasted off and painted, because all it is a cast iron casting. I'm assuming it's cast iron. There's not a whole lot else you can do to those because all they are is a small cast plate. Now that's been described as very rare. This is the only one I've ever seen, and it's very rare and very desirable, and somebody bought it. Somebody bid on that, and they bought it and gave probably a little bit more than it's worth for a small lump of cast iron. To me, it's not rare at all. There's one on my shaper. My shaper's got a standard rectangular electrical box that somebody's retrofitted, I'm assuming, at some point in time, and it's got that exact same plate on it. So Was it a limited run that Atlas did to fit those boxes to it? Was it something that maybe to put in a small production environment where they were used in a small machine shop, that Atlas offered that plate because they knew they were going to be plugged into maybe a three-phase switch or something like that? I don't honestly know the history of that, but to me that was advertised as rare and almost one of a kind and refurbished and everything, and it's not rare. It's just something that's out there. So, and like I say, the only reason I share that is just be aware of what you're buying. Some of the prices that some of these parts will bring is way more than I'm ever going to be willing to pay, and you'll see that in original Atlas vices, rotary tables, that type of thing. For what they're asking for them, it's much more than they're worth for the item that you're receiving. You know, because there again, their vise, other than being a factory original vise for either the mill or the shaper, they're not a great design. Every one I've seen is pretty rough and, you know, been well used and is not as tight as it can be. And I say that because I have two of those vices. I believe they're both for the shaper. I don't believe I have one for the milling machine, and the only difference between them is the base. The shaper has a 4-hole base that bolts onto the table, whereas the milling machine has a 2-hole base, just like the rotary table that Atlas offers. And the rotary table is another one. It's a manual index rotary table. There's no way to position it and then rotate it in a controlled manner, we'll say. You can index it with a lever fitted in one of the holes in the side, or a rod fitted in one of the holes in the side and rotate it around. It's not a great design if you really want to use it for anything. If you're just wanting to machine something at a known angle, then yes, they're fine. But if we're using them to round the end of a piece of material or whatever the case may be, it's a very non-functional design for that, in my opinion. So just be aware of what you're buying. Just be aware of what you want to spend. You can occasionally run across a fair deal. You're not going to find exceptional deals because people seem to think that these little machines are worth gold now. You know, when we're wanting $2,500, $3,000 and more for some of these machines, your money's probably better invested in other things. So anyway, just my little opinion. Did want to show you what I have going, and hopefully we'll see some progress here as time goes on. So as always, any comments or suggestions, leave them in the comments section for me below, and thanks for taking the time to watch.